Welcome to the Numbers Game, the show where analytics meets the action and data drives the decisions. Happy new league year! I'm Cynthia Frelund. Free agency has officially begun, and boy, have we seen a pretty interesting sequence of events already. I was unfortunately attending a funeral and not able to be a part of NFL Network's coverage, which I love the name of. It's called Free Agency Frenzy. But that just means we'll get to take a look at the moves together. And by together, I mean that I also called in a great mind that you need to know who will help add even more context to our numbers game breakdown of what's gone on so far and why it matters. Keegan Abdoo, welcome to the show. Keegan is a big part of the Next Gen Stats team here at the NFL. He's the senior manager of research and analytics. But what I like the most about Keegan is the thoughtfulness he has around how the numbers in the game actually work and what they all mean in terms of wins. What do I actually mean by this? Well, not only does he ask and research some of the coolest and most innovative theories around, but he also never loses sight of the practical implications. Basically, he never forgets how or why, which is one of the biggest ways that I measure other data scientists, which means I just love working with him. And broadcasters, not just me, but especially the former players, love how he manages this delicate balance between the two. And it is not hyperbole to say that I would be 0% shocked if he's running an NFL team in the not so distant future, and they'd be significantly smarter for having him. Oh, and this isn't our first time doing one of these. We were lucky enough to represent AWS for Next Gen Stats at the Super Bowl and had a great time talking with our Fox friends in New Orleans. Keegan, welcome. Give me one move, be it a free agent signing or trade cut, that you think will have the biggest impact on the 2025 season.
Thanks for having me on, Cynthia. I think the most obvious one, anytime you can go from, a bottom three quarterback situation to above average to potentially elite, I think that's the biggest improvement you can make to a team. And that's going to be Geno Smith and the Raiders going out and acquiring him for a mid-round pick, reuniting him with Pete Carroll, where he kind of was able to revitalize his career. Obviously, Pete Carroll, more of a defensive coach, but just in general, I think he brings much needed leadership to that offense. And beyond that, just a live arm. I really think that of the players on that team and like the core pieces on the Raiders, Brock Bowers, this is going to help his development a lot. He had an unbelievable rookie season, set records, especially for his position, but he was mostly used like on horizontal stretches. He was used on crossers and flats and relied a lot after the catch to pick up his production. And I think that, with Geno being able to push the ball downfield, you'll get him a lot more on the seams, the deep in routes, and over the middle of the field, and really be able to take his game to the next level and, stretch the field vertically rather than just horizontally.
I think we'd be remiss not to point out that Chip Kelly, so this is Chip Kelly's return to the NFL after being at Ohio State last year, UCLA before that, etc. But it's interesting to me. I also know that they're bringing whatever breaking news here, but I believe that they will be adding some analytics help from someone we know that has been in some places with some pretty eagerly, but Jacksonville. Anyways, some good analytics mindfulness towards that team as well. It's going to be interesting to see, especially with like all of the Geno stuff, like pre-snap motion. We talked a lot about that this past couple of weeks. All of the different tricks and like tricks of the trade that Chip Kelly will. I'm excited. Like, give them a little bit more wide receiver help, and I think it could become even more interesting as well.
Yeah, and I think also with Chip Kelly, he famously brought the spread to the NFL back in 2012 or whatever year it was that he took the league by storm with the Eagles, the fast-paced offense, and very interested to see what he brings to the league this year, after going back to college and, developing his offense and everything there. And, with Geno last year playing in the Alex Grubb offense, which is maybe a little bit too college-y, especially given the personnel that they had, I think it'll be a pretty smooth transition for him, meeting somewhere in the middle, whatever that offense does end up looking like with Chip Kelly.
All right, so we have to like talk about the void, right? So Seahawks move on from Geno, bring in Sam Darnold. That was one of the
Yeah.
pieces. I thought Sam was going to stay. I thought he'd stay in Minnesota. At least that's what we were sort of hearing combine rumor wise. That's what I heard at least. But I'm curious. What do you think? How do you think Sam Darnold's going to look in this new look Seattle Seahawks offense with like basically none of the same players except for like Jackson Smith and Jigba and their running backs?
Yeah. So I think that Darnold, it's a really good case study in separating the production from the environment. Playing in Minnesota last year with one of the best receiving cores you could possibly have, a guy who won Coach of the Year, and a fantastically designed offense, and an offensive line that was good and deteriorated over the second half of the year. But again, I think that was a big area where Seattle struggled last year. And again, maybe it was the offense they were trying to run. They were so pass heavy that teams could really just tee off, and they just didn't have the offensive line personnel to deal with the elite pass rushes that they would see. But getting rid of those weapons, now you just have Jackson Smith and Jigba, who broke out last year and I think is a great receiver. But now you're missing that X receiver. It's going to be a lot different. I do believe in Clinton Kubiak. I think he showed that he's able to, create offense out of not a lot of parts, as with all the injuries that the Saints dealt with last year. So that'll be at least a little bit, play caller might fall off a little bit, but won't be too hard. But the pieces around him, I think he could really struggle if they don't invest heavily in that offensive line, maybe in the draft, maybe bringing in a few extra pieces in free agency. Because, over the second half of the season, especially later down the stretch, you saw when the Vikings offensive line was overwhelmed, Darnold couldn't do anything.
That's right. It was interesting when I went back and watched some of the Seattle O-line, and I know some things will change by the time we get to playing. Like, I don't know. There's some version of the O-line where some of it's the play caller and it doesn't fit together. And some version where, they were injured for part of the year. There were some issues. Yeah. I feel like I don't have a good beat on that O-line in general. Like, I don't know if I don't think they're above average. They could be average to below average. I'm just curious to see how that to me is the biggest concern with Sam Darnold is, it works a lot better when your quarterback's upright, turns out.
Right. And, Geno Smith was one of he saw some of the most quick pressure in the league last year. I know it's been a big talking point, just comparing those two situations. It's a lot harder to win when you're getting pressured in, before any routes can really develop. So, I think Charles Cross is a great player, a young player. He could still take a step up. Abe Lucas on the other side was hurt for most of the year last year, and they have a few, younger pieces on the inside, but they need to develop and they need to, come together and improve for this offense to really stand a chance this year. Maybe they're, trying to retool the defense and become more defensive focused under Mike McDonald. They definitely showed strides in that last year, but it did seem like a lateral to downgrade at quarterback for a similar amount of money.
Yeah, I guess maybe we'll be proven wrong. I don't know. The one that I'm like the quarterback move. So obviously, like it's fun to say Daniel Jones goes to Indianapolis. That's interesting, I guess. I don't know, but I'm curious. How do you feel about the Jets and Justin Fields?
I like it. Just the Jets are not in a great place to compete right now, just because Rodgers, brought in who he wanted to bring in. It didn't work, and they're, cap. They're not the most flexible cap scenario right now. I think they're doing more of a long-term plan. So why not take a flyer on Fields at a really, cheap deal, $40 million, I believe, over 2 years. That's about as cheap as you can get for a starting quarterback. And Fields has shown that he can be a, bottom 5 starting quarterback, but he still has that potential. He was still a top 10 overall pick. He's a great athlete, got a good arm. It's just everything else that never really connected. But I don't mind bringing him in as just a bridge quarterback. We've seen it work out before. We've seen guys kind of reclaim their careers too. The guys we just talked about, Darnold and Geno Smith, did not necessarily have great first contract play, even though they were both top 15 or top 2-round picks. So I think, I like bringing in a guy who still is clearly talented. You can design a QB run game with, and at least take a flyer on him if you don't feel like you're in a good position to pick a quarterback in this draft, or don't like necessarily the quarterback class.
I actually think that if I'm the Jets, I'm taking Justin Fields, and then I'm taking a quarterback. Maybe not in the first round, unless someone that I love fell to me, or I could trade back in at the end for, like someone who I thought could be a nice upside situation and potentially get whatever. But I don't know. I wouldn't be mad at the Jets I think that's a great strategy to double.
Yeah,
because when you don't have you should take as many swings as you can. It's not right. There's no, even the guys who we now think are home runs, like the Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allens of the world, it's possible if they didn't go to the same places that they went, that they wouldn't have had the same outcome. So you never know. Just keep swinging. Aaron Glenn, I really like Aaron Glenn. Jets have been hard to watch, but I like Aaron Glenn a lot. So I think that would be a good strategy for him.
Definitely. I think Glenn could turn that place around just from a culture standpoint. Really heard some great things about him coaching this past year, and all the defensive injuries that they dealt with and how competitive they were able to stay. So, yeah.
Speaking of teams, which team do you think got the best so far? And we're not doing rumors, because I kind of would love to know what you. Okay, no, wait, we're going to do one rumor. Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers. What do you think would happen there?
I am a Giants fan, so I would actually rather him go to the Steelers and just have us not deal with those headaches. I think that it's an interesting fit with the receivers that they have. If Rodgers just really wants to play go balls and slants and flats, if they do keep Pickens, you got two of the best go ball receivers in very different ways. DK is more of a speed guy, and Pickens is more of a go up and get the ball. Yes, exactly. Despite their differences in body size. So I think that overall, like the fit of the teams left, I think it makes sense. You just have to hope that Rodgers doesn't want to bring in everyone else and kind of set you back a few years if it doesn't work out, because his old gang of buddies, the Lazards, the Randall Cobbs, they all come along with Rodgers at many of his previous stops, as we've seen. So I think, he still might have something in him, and when he's at his best, he's still a top 10 quarterback for sure. But the mobility concerns with the torn Achilles 2 years ago, and just overall how he wants to run his offense, I don't know if that necessarily meshes with Arthur Smith's system. So there's a lot of question marks there, but, he's still Aaron Rodgers. He's still got a great arm, and he's still got good command at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it'd be interesting. I personally still somehow want him to end up in Minnesota, and I want what happened. He was 12 and now he's 8, and I want him to turn into 4, because then he will have fully turned into 4. Yeah. But that's just because I think the narrative is so funny. Like, there's nothing to do with actual football. That's just because I think it's hilarious. But
yeah,
I digress.
It'd be good insurance. You don't know if JJ McCarthy, he's never played it down in the NFL, and also, the injury is a little scary there. So insurance there definitely isn't a bad thing, but they also have a good thing going. So maybe don't blow it up with Aaron Rodgers.
It's just hilarious. I just think it'd be funny. Anyway, so, okay.
The personalities in that Steelers locker room, though. Tomlin would have his work cut out for him, but it's not like he hasn't done it every other year, but it would be very interesting.
I believe Mike Tomlin should be considered for coach of the year, even if he has unwinning years, because every player that has played for him, when they go to another team, turns into
maybe a Nobel Peace Prize if he makes the playoffs with that roster.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Team that's gotten the best so far through these free agent signing, all this, whatever, trades, all of the ways that it's happened. Team that's gotten the best. And you could answer with a team that's done nothing, but the team that's improved the most so far.
So I had a hard time deciding between two NFC North teams here. I think the Bears, if we take the totality of the offseason, I think that bringing in Ben Johnson and then making those moves that they made on the offensive line is just like a no-brainer. They go from having, Caleb Williams his rookie year, most sacked quarterback. Some of that might be his own play style. Some of that might be, just being overwhelmed with having to call protections his rookie year. But a lot of that was they were 31st in total cap spending on their offensive line last season, with the number one overall pick. And especially on the interior, the offensive line, there was so many, protection busts and just being overpowered. So going and getting Joe Tooney, going and getting Jonah Jackson, and going and signing Drew Dahlman, you now go from 31st to 3rd in cap spending on your offensive line. You're investing where it matters. That's very much copying the Detroit Lions playbook from when Ben Johnson was there. Last year, the Lions actually had the most expensive offensive line in the league by the AAV, which is the average annual value. So I think that's just a really good overall, like, shore up the biggest weakness of this offense and really protect your quarterback. And now Ben Johnson hopefully gets to, create a more dynamic run game, which also just helps Caleb Williams take the pressure off him and help him develop and maybe shake some bad habits that he learned his rookie year. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Dennis Allen, I think he's a fantastic defensive coordinator to bring in for a first-time head coach. And while the two guys that they brought in so far defensively along the defensive line might have been a little bit of overspends, especially Dio Odeyingbo. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but
it was perfect.
He, they're bringing him in, paying him like a top, 20 defensive end. That might be a little bit rich for a guy who only has had one above average pressure rate season, but he has improved his pressure rate every year while playing more snaps every year. He's a bigger defensive end, so he fits kind of that Dennis Allen pocket pushing archetype a little bit more. He can play on the interior, which he has done during his career on later downs. And then Grady Jarrett, he's going to be, I believe, 32 by the time the season starts. But he's been, a stud defensive tackle forever, and you're really not paying him that much. I think he comes in about 20th among defensive tackles in average annual value percentage of the cap. So I think that those two additions to improve already talented defense and fit a little bit more into Dennis Allen's system while also shoring up the biggest weakness of your team really sets them up to be much improved next season, although everyone thought they won free agency in the offseason last year. So we'll see how that all plays out. And then the other one, I just want to mention the Vikings. I really like what they've done, even though they lost their starting quarterback from last year. They went ahead and took 2 swings at defensive tackle, more calculated swings, guys that they're not paying at the top half of their position in terms of AAV, but Javon Hargrave, who's one of the best pass rushing defensive tackles and has been by pressure rate number 1 in the league over the last 5 seasons, has never had a pressure rate below 12.5% over the last 5 seasons, which is pretty crazy. He can be a little risky, a risk taker against the run, definitely more of a penetrator than a space eater. But I think Brian Flores knows how to use a player like that more than almost anyone. And it's something that the Vikings defensive tackles last season combined for the least amount of sacks, only 5. And then they go out also Jonathan Allen, former All-Pro, definitely, getting older, but still a very useful player. I think the combination of those two is a big, and then just retaining the players that, made them great, that were, stood out for them last year between Byron Murphy, Aaron Jones, and then also going and improving on their offensive line. So they brought in Ryan Kelly from the Colts and Will Fries also from the Colts. That's just, again, offensive line improvement is going to be a big theme here.
Oh, I mean, clearly I'm all in for that. I always thought it was funny last year that Ryan Poles, a former offensive lineman, was spending nothing on offensive linemen. That was the first thing I thought was interesting. Jonah Jackson's a reunion for Ben Johnson from the Lions, and Dahlman allegedly took less money to play in that Ben Johnson system.
Oh, wow. Even though he's still getting paid a lot, but yeah.
I'm not worried about I'm not counting his change. I'm not worried about him. You don't need to pass a hat for him, but allegedly that, so those all bode well for the type of people who want to be there. That always tends to make for happier players, usually end up having a better season. So I'm with you on those. I was also looking at the Commanders. I thought that it was interesting. Like, look, they maybe Debo's great, maybe he's not. It's a 5th round pick. And And I think what they pulled off for Laramie Tunsil, if you want to talk about offensive line improvements, I didn't realize he would be available for a song because I thought the market was going to be so much more difficult. I mean, the Ronnie Stanley, there just weren't a lot of even tackles, right, left, doesn't matter, in the market in general that
Right.
were available to be moved. So I thought that was an interesting coup because ultimately, I don't know, like that was the area. I didn't know how they were going to get the O line they wanted. I didn't know. And then retaining the Bobby Wagners of the world, who Bobby Wagner, he's not the youngest guy either, and that missed tackle rate of his was incredible, like one of the lowest forced missed tackle rates or missed tackle rates, whatever, this whole last season. So that's like a Dan Quinn like personality type of guy. And then when
Yes.
you're looking at right, and then on the same guy on the offense, Zach Ertz coming back one more time. That's like Cliff Kingsbury's trump card, right? Like they all need those little, what is John Payton calls it a joker, but whatever. Like we can call them whatever we
Right.
need. So I thought they did a nice job, especially because remember you have to kind of take on the Marshawn Lattimore from last season. That trade to me kind of becomes this year's deal because he wasn't fully healthy last year. So that gives them flexibility to now they can look at O line, they can look at secondary pieces, they can look at passers, and this class is chock full of DTs. So Jonathan Allen's replacement probably won't be as hard to find as in other years. So I thought that they had a really nice offseason so far as well. Adam Peters out here winning again.
Yeah, I think the Commanders, it's going to be very, very interesting next year. They lived a lot on the edge last year. They had an amazing, turnaround, amazing run that they had. A lot of players, have left. They've retained a few. Um, and I think that their transactions and who they brought in could definitely be a home run. Laramie Tunsil could be a home run. Debo Samuel could be a home run.
Great.
They could also, I think they're risky. I think there's a very wide distribution of outcomes for the Commanders this season. Especially how successful they were on fourth down last season and everything. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep the magic going. Maybe Jaden Daniels is just that guy. So we'll see. Definitely a team to watch next year, and it will be very interesting when they play a tougher schedule how things go.
I just really like a strategy being cohesive. Do you want to like at least because like I don't understand what the Texans are. We'll get to that in a minute. Like some of these other teams, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it remains to be seen. But it's interesting. Like to me, we always talk about those signings, like the guys who aren't the premium guys. Like you want to keep your. It's great that they got Max Crosby back. You can't let him walk out the door, otherwise you're gonna have no Raiders fans. Like he is a Raider, right? Like it's great
Right.
that Myles Garrett was. The owner wouldn't speak to him and then he gets a huge whatever. Like all those things are great. But who are like, is there some like not under the radar, but like less premium potential money guy that you think like this signing is like that A+, like that's a good signing?
So I guess it's hard to say like if Javon Hargrave counts as a more under the radar because he's not getting the money that he did a few years ago, but he's not being paid within the top 15 of his position, which I think we're maybe right on the cusp here. But again, as I said earlier, I think the way he fits in that system and just his pass rush production over the last couple of years has been outstanding. So I think that's a huge get for the Vikings. If you want to go a little bit lower, it's maybe not an acquisition, but it's a retainer. Adam Butler being brought back by the Raiders, I thought he was just a monster against the run the past two seasons. He's a player that has kind of developed and gotten better almost every year. And last year, he played by far his most amount of snaps and had his most full-time role. He was, we always talk about how many snaps that Max Crosby plays and just how, obviously availability is the best, ability as the old adage goes. But as a defensive tackle, he, I think, cleared 800 snaps last year, which is pretty ridiculous, and to still maintain a high level of production against the run. I mean, you look at his stats over the last two seasons against the run, and run production, defensive tackles, it's not the whole story, but he has nearly identical numbers to Vita Vea, and you're paying him, outside the top 40 of his position. So I think that's a nice glue guy to bring back as they, keep Patrick Graham, keep Max Crosby, and bring in Pete Carroll there in Las Vegas.
Yeah, well, one that is my pick that left Vegas. Unfortunately, I don't think they were trying to let him leave, but Robert Spillane, like Patriots,
Yes.
Patriots low key killing it. We should have probably brought up the Patriots a little bit more, but I
Yes.
love Robert Spillane. I thought he's the leading tackler of the Raiders last year. Obviously, the linebacker level that tells you a little bit about how their defense worked or didn't work or whatever. But ultimately, you know, his ability to find the correct angle and minimize his time. So undrafted out of Western Michigan, went to the Titans, then he went to the Steelers and then the Raiders, and now he's like a journeyman, and he's never commanding this like premium money, but that's a game changer in the middle of that Patriots defense. It is a Vrabel personality. It is and linebacker. You're not going to get Vrabel to be like, hey, we need a wimpy one. Like not going to work. So I just think this guy is like, he's smart. He, again, when you measure his hips, like finding the ball, I can do it on run, I can do it on pass. He is exceptional at it, and that is an unheralded position. So that, I don't know, that one was, I was like, yay, I'm glad Spillane like signed someplace where he'll be appreciated by his coach.
I think he's gotten again, another one of those players that has just gotten better year over year. And starting as an undrafted guy to being, a very good starting linebacker. It's good to see him cash in on that. And I totally agree. Great, culture fit there. And I think between him and Milton Williams, and Carlton Davis, they might have overpaid for all three of them, but you have that much cap space. It's like at one point you have to use the cap space, and they got three guys. Milton Williams, who's a budding star. We'll see. Playing next to Jalen Carter is a little bit different than playing next to Christian Barmore, who's a great player in his own right. But still extremely disruptive, and took a huge step up this season. Was always going to be more of a project. And then Carlton Davis, as a CB2 across from Christian Gonzalez, is another great signing. Allows you to play a lot of man coverage. And just overall, I kind of think be the defense that Vrabel wants to run in New England. Also, Mac Hollins, great dirty work guy, get a few offensive linemen. I still think they should probably just go offensive line in the draft and just, really protect Drake May. But
I think that's, to me, that I mocked them to my favorite offensive lineman when I did my mock draft, volume 1. I'm pretty sure I feel like they're going to get a nice package from LSU, and they're gonna love it, right? Like
there we go. I love that. Yeah,
nice Will Campbell sized left tackle for themselves. So we will see, but it's interesting when I'm looking at when I'm looking at kind of like all of these teams. We have to say there are some non-winners, head scratchers. Who are you like? What's going on?
So one of the teams. Of teams that have actually gone out and done stuff, because the people that
done nothing, right? But yeah,
that's one other thing. I think the Packers are a little bit of a head scratcher. They haven't made that many moves, but the Aaron Banks move was just a lot of money to pay a guard who was a liability in pass protection last year. He allowed the third highest pressure rate at his position and is now getting paid a boatload of money. 13th by AAV at a guard position. I think the reason they go and do that is they wanted more of a mauler in the run game, and he is a good run blocker. And I think, that's the identity of the Packers and what they want to do, but they paid a lot of money for him. And I just didn't think that, he would break the bank like that. Maybe after Trey Smith goes, they think he's the next guy there. And then Nate Hobbs is another guy that they go out and pay more money than, maybe a lot of people were expecting to give him. And then they also lose out on the wide receiver sweepstakes so far. We'll see, if T. Higgins does become available, if they go out and try and risk it all for him. But, they were highly linked to DK Metcalf, which would have made a lot of sense, with Christian Watson most likely missing most of the season next year. They need one of those field stretching X's. And DK would have been that guy. They missed out there. Maybe, they didn't miss out by having to give him a 4-year, $132 million extension, but still, they're missing that alpha receiver next year. And So far, the two moves that they did make seemed like pretty big overpays to me.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty quiet. I told you, I said before, I'm a little confused what the Texans are doing. I don't think
Yeah,
it's cohesive. Um, you know, you talk about Caleb Williams being under pressure. CJ Stroud also was under quite a bit of pressure. I mean, that O line was not helpful to him. The interior of that O line specifically was, I mean, for many points of the season last year, I think until like week 13 or something, we're like, team that's given up the most sacks on the interior line, Texans. Like it was the majority of last season, the middle of that offensive line was just not working. And a lot of people were like, what's wrong with CJ Stroud? Why can't he diagnose zone? Blah, 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 blah. Like, well, we don't know because, in my opinion, obviously something weird happened with Bobby Slowick. He's no longer there. So, okay. And then, the O line was getting him in. And then the run game was like when it worked, it was great. When it didn't work, there was no plan B. So I don't see them shoring that up. I mean, they bring in a couple of moves made a little sense. Like Sheldon Rankins is back after, he was sick last year. Now he's probably better. It's a cheap deal, whatever. But like CJ Gardner Johnson makes sense, but also, I don't know, like trading
give
away.
up a former first round pick guard that maybe at least you hope that the new offensive line coach can kind of coach some of these guys up. I do think the Tunsil trade is interesting for them. They did get a good amount of resources back, and if they think at this point in Tunsil's career that they're selling at a high point, then they could be right. They could win that trade. But if he goes ahead and turns it around, then they're gonna really regret that trade most likely in terms of protecting the blind side of a franchise quarterback. It's a hard thing to give up, and you have to have a lot of confidence that Tunsil is on the downswing of his career and isn't going to see a bounce back season.
What do you think about your Giants? You are a Giants fan. I'll tell you what I think about the
Yeah,
Lions. The Lions have done. I'll give you first. Resigning they've resigned the guys they have to resign. It's not going to be a splashy
yeah.
free agency for them. They've got a lot of mouths to feed. They had to make some hard decisions. Carlton, he's gone. Like Carlton Davis is gone. Like there's a couple of guys. It looks like Kevin Zeitler will be with the Titans, but again, it seems like they were trying to. They went down their list and they got the defensive pieces they needed. They're trying to figure it out. Zarius Smith's gone, but they're kind of like great, but like not bad, not like they're not winning, but they're not losing. They're doing what they need to do. So that was my mind.
You hope they're healthier next year too, that more than anything, because I mean, some of the key pieces, quote unquote, that you're losing were only key pieces because they were third, fourth down the depth chart, and Aaron Glenn did such a good job of coaching up the backups and maintaining that high level of play despite all the injuries that they had. The riches to do that. The Giants. Little bit of topsy turvy. I do think the Javon Holland signing is one of the best this free agency period. I think you look at what they lost with McKinney last year, but to the contract that he signed, and compared to Javon Holland, and those guys are different safeties, different positions, but overall the overall umbrella of safety, I think Holland. You're getting a better deal at Holland at the contract they signed him to what they let McKinney go to. Despite McKinney leading the NFL in interceptions last year, but we won't get to that. They got a great comp pick for that. Then there's some weird head scratchers like, okay, Darius Slayton, I know it's a receiver. I know what the receiver market is, but you're signing Darius Slayton to essentially the same contract that Saquon Barkley signed last year. And I know that their cap goes up and, the percentage of the cap is different. The position is different. It's just like, it's so hard to get over that simple fact. And I think the fans are not over that simple fact. And at quarterback, you're courting, it seems like it's going to be Rodgers or Russ. I think both are fine unless you do just trade up for Cam Ward or pick another quarterback at 3. I don't know. It seems there's some good, there's some bad. I'm not overwhelmingly feeling one way or the other about how the Giants have handled this.
I kind of feel like I love the Javon Holland signing. I like that. It's interesting. I guess to me, I thought they'd be more buyers in more wide receiver. Like I thought they'd be in on some more bigger. Like it's if you're gonna get an Aaron Rodgers or if you're gonna get a Russell Wilson, you don't need to
Yeah.
pay. You're not the you'll save some money, right? And then maybe you double down, you draft another quarterback, but also give them something like they're working on their O line. I don't know what I think the sum of the parts will be, but they're at least bringing some people in.
Yep.
But I don't know who, outside. Obviously we got number one. He's great. Malik Neighbors is wonderful. But like, then what? Like, do you need a tight end? Like, what are we working with here? So that's kind of where I'm just like, go get them a billion people to pass to. Like, figure it out. Like, maybe not the A+ guys, but like maybe there'll be bigger buyers in this second wave, and like try them out and say in and out. Like you are in, you're out. Like you don't have to be crazy. You don't have to overpay. You could maybe find some. They just need more. They need more to complement Malik Neighbors, especially now that in year two, it's not like people were not keying in on him last year, but even so, it doesn't get easier in year two, especially in the beginning.
Right. And maybe they look with that, second round pick, because I doubt that they go a receiver or weapon in the top three. That's going to be a premium position or a quarterback. But I mean, I think the defense should be. It actually has some very interesting pieces going into next year, at least. Bringing in Holland, I think Adebo, when he's healthy, can be a very good player. And, you have Burns, Lawrence, and Thibodeau along the defensive line. Okirike is a solid player. Like, it could be a solid defense that was maybe 1 year away last year, and you're improving it there. The offense is just the huge question mark, as it has been for a while now.
Yeah. Well, all right. So my one last one. Where are these quarterbacks going? Now that we've seen this first wave, we'll put on our prediction hats. Who's getting a quarterback? Or early round,
right.
First or second round pick quarterback, not like a sixth round.
Yeah.
See, I was right.
I think that either the Titans fall in love with Cam Ward and pick him, or they're trading out of the pick. I think Cam Ward's going to go number one. I don't think he's number one quarterback in most draft classes, but he's good enough where you take him number one. And in the way that the quarterback market is inflated, he has a chance to be, a very good starter. And he's a guy. So I think that he ends up going number one. It seems like it's going to be the Giants that trade up if it's anyone. Allows the Titans still get a premium pick. I don't know if the Browns have the resources to do that, but I don't.
What do they need? They've got Kenny Pickett. They're good.
Right. Exactly. I don't think that the other guys are going to. I highly doubt that the other guys go top 10, even after the run on quarterbacks we saw last year. I just think it's a different quarterback class, different levels of talent, and different levels of prospects. I think that someone ends up taking a chance on Shedeur in the first round. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being, in the teens. And then Jackson Dart, it seems like a lot of teams like him. I'm skeptical of guys coming out of the Lane Kiffin system so far. But I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up going, later in the first round based on the murmurs, but he could also fall into the second round. And even Shedeur, I wouldn't be the most surprised if he falls into the second round as well. We could be looking at that Kenny Pickett draft class where it was him, Ritter, and Malik Willis, and there was some buzz around these guys, and then we got to draft day, and Pickett was the only one to go to the first two rounds. So I don't know. It should be interesting. I'm not in love with any of the guys as a prospect. I think Ward's definitely the most interesting of them, but it's gonna be weird to see who doubles down and who just decides to roll with what they have. Like it's hard for me to think that the Titans, the Giants, unless the Giants go out and get Rodgers, and the Browns don't, and the Jets don't bring in an extra guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's going to get nothing but more interesting. I'm with you, but I think it's going to be. I think the Shedeur thing will be. I mocked him to the Saints. Actually, like that. It's going to be a team, in my opinion, and again, strictly my opinion, just strategically, like, because being able to sit behind Derek Carr, learn a little bit. I don't know if that would work personality wise. He's not in my all 30. I don't get an all 30, so I can't interview all of them in my own building. But I think it would be interesting to see some place where he had a moment to learn the pro system from a pro. That I think that would be really good for. It's good for every quarterback, but in this class, I think Cam Ward would benefit from that too. I don't think he's going to be given that opportunity, but I think because I think some team will need him now. But I think that would be great for anyone. So I think Shador specifically, just because I don't know what I saw, his O-line was not helpful to him one bit at Colorado, and he made plays, a ton of plays, but that's against defenses who are not NFL defenses. So we shall see. But I would like that. I would like him to go sit behind Derek Carr.
Interesting. I'm still a believer in Spencer Rattler, so I don't know if the Saints are. So I don't know. Just as an interesting piece.
I watched Spencer Rattler throw when he was here for Elite 11 in Manhattan Beach. It was a number of years ago, and it was right before NIL started. And Spencer Rattler came up to me and someone else, and he was like, "Ladies," he's like, "you guys understand I'm not throwing today because NIL starts tomorrow." And I'm like, "Ooh," I'm like, "Oh, okay, kid."
Oh, okay, big guy.
But I mean, listen, he's like, again, he had another year of college. Like we all get older and we get better. And I just was like, I kind of like the confidence.
Exactly.
I like the confidence because if a 300-pound man's running at me, I need confidence too. So it just was a little crazy, but
exactly. You definitely need some confidence at the position.
Oh, you need a lot of confidence at that position. Thank you so much for your time. When you're running a team, will you at least give me a job interview?
Of course, Cynthia. You'll probably be the one that's hiring me somewhere anyway.
No, I cannot thank you enough. Anything Next Gen Stats you see, all of our AWS Next Gen Stats stuff, it's pretty much Keegan. He's doing all of it, and we can all thank him for the little green thing on the bottom and the little noise that happens, and then you get smarter, and now you know who's making you smarter. It's Keegan.
Me and a great team of 10 seasonal analysts and a bunch of brilliant engineers that make it all happen. I can't take all the credit. There's plenty of cooks in that kitchen, but I appreciate the shout out.
Totally. But you make it all so easy for us to digest and understand. Thank you so much. I will see you soon. Told you Keegan was going to be awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out. If you like the show, please like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and pass it along so we can continue to grow.